An oligarch who was once the richest man in Russia says it's entirely possible that Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine might spell the end of his rule. Mikhail Khodorkovsky is a fierce critic of Putin. He spent years in prison in Russia and now lives in exile. He told CNN that Putin is losing in Ukraine, and if it keeps up, he likely will not be president of that country or the leader of that country for much longer.
Right now, Putin is clearly suffering a defeat, but he can, of course, still kill very many people. If the West continues to support Ukraine, his own defeat is inevitable. A coup is possible, and this has happened in Russian history before. But at the moment, Putin is able to project a fairly positive picture to the Russian population. If he starts looking like a loser, then a coup is possible.
Joining me now, CNN national security analyst and former CIA chief of Russia operations, Steve Hall. Steve, great to see you. Appreciate it. You actually wrote a piece for the Washington Post that Putin does fear a coup, but not by his oligarchs, not by the Russian people, but by his fellow spies. Is this sort of a live by the KGB, die by the KGB sort of scenario?
Well, Jim, I think it's more of just how the system is set up in Russia under Putinism. We have three branches of government here in the United States. And in Russia, it's sort of like you've got Putin, then you have the Siloviki, which are the security and military elites, and then you've got the oligarchs, who are essentially, the economic money laundering types. The oligarchs, like Khodorkovsky used to be before he was thrown into jail, do have some control. They've got a piece of the economic pie, and they exert a little bit of control. But the people that I think Putin is very much more concerned about are these security officials who not only have the wherewithal, they have armed forces that serve under them, but they've also got the intelligence and they've got the ability to operate clandestinely. So I think that function of the system, as Putin set it up, is reminiscent, of course, of what happened to Mikhail Gorbachev in 1991, where there was a coup against him. So that's kind of, I think, the situation that Putin finds himself in now.
And we've all seen these recent photos of Putin at these, ridiculously huge tables, physically far apart from other people. In some cases, it seems like he's set apart from, people in his national security and foreign policy realm, other top-level government officials, which is kind of strange when you think about it. What is going on with some of that in your view? And I mean, is it COVID? We've talked about some of this before. Or is he actually worried that somebody is going to try to kill him?
I think that it's a combination of things. I mean, it does appear that Putin was inordinately concerned about contracting COVID, which is sort of ironic because, of course, Russia, pioneered, if you will, the Sputnik shot, which the vaccine, which he assumedly would have had, but I guess didn't have a whole lot of faith in. He normally is in somewhat of a bubble simply because there's not a whole lot of people who have direct access to him, and even when they do, it's not like it's not like a typical situation, staff meeting type of thing that you would have here in the U.S. government, where you have usually a frank and open exchange of views. With Putin, you have to be very careful what you say in front of him. So that's a bit of isolation as well. I don't think he thinks that somebody's going to launch themselves across that long table and try to poison him, with the tip of an umbrella or something. I think he is more concerned about collusion that could happen against him because of how badly it's going, not just in Ukraine, but also how the impact of the sanctions are coming down in Russia. And that's only going to unfold more as we go forward. So his worries are going to continue to be there.
And there's been a lot of talk, Steve, in the last week about, whether or not Putin is trying to come up with a bogus pretext for the use of chemical or biological weapons, accusing the Ukrainians of, plotting in this area or having I guess labs that may be developing those types of weapons, that sort of thing, without offering any evidence. And that could be used as a pretext for Putin, for the Russians to use those types of weapons. What are your thoughts on that? How does that sound to you?
Yeah, that all really does make sense. I mean, you don't have to go back too far. You can go back to the Syrian war to see that there's a lot of those tactics that were used. You recall that the deal that Putin had with Assad is that Assad would say, look, there's bad terrorists out there. Of course, there weren't, but he would say, we need to go do something serious. And they just use chemical weapons, so let's annihilate that entire city in Aleppo's case. But you don't have to go. I mean, that's a relatively recent example. There are other historical examples where this sort of provocational propaganda can lead then to action or attempted action. I mean, remember that in the 80s, it was the Russians who accused the United States of the AIDS virus being something that the Pentagon thought up, and so something needed to be done about that. So the Russians have been doing this for decades. They're very good at it. And when you confront them and say, well, wait a minute, you guys made up that pretext to go in and bomb that city, they'll simply say, I know you are, but what am I? Sort of in a playground. No, we didn't. You must have done something. It's just very predictable, and it's what they always do.